I'm Angela Morabito with Campus Reform, and you're watching 5 Big Questions. Peter Boghossian is here today to discuss his resignation letter from Portland State University. Peter is an author, a philosopher, and until a few weeks ago, a professor at Portland State. Peter, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
It's our pleasure. Now, in your resignation letter, you detail this litany of abuses you suffered at Portland State, everything from vandalism to a sham Title IX investigation to having other professors tell students not to take your classes. So when you were deciding to resign, how did you get to this point? What was the last straw?
I tried to repeatedly over email. I asked the university president to meet with me for 5 minutes. And I was constantly told he was too busy. He was too busy, can't meet with me for 5 minutes. I finally managed to get an interview with, not even an interview, a very brief 3-4 minute conversation with the dean. And I told the dean that it came up very early in the conversation that I was deeply concerned about student education, and I was deeply concerned about the culture we're creating. And he said something to the extent of, well, what do you mean? And I said, do you know that the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, and if your listeners don't know, that's FIRE, it's led by Greg Lukianoff, they published in 2020 that Portland State University was one of the worst colleges for free speech in the country. And I told him this, and this individual said to me, it's a good thing to be on those lists. And that completely blew my mind. It blew my mind because, well, not only was this individual a true believer, but this was not a bug of the ideology. This was a feature of it. This was a good thing. And that was really the last straw. And then the pandemic hit, and that changed things for a while. But that was really the last straw. And then I was just investigated again too. But at that moment, I made up my mind that this was not, me being there was contributing to this mission and compromising my integrity.
If there is any hope for the university, meaning not just Portland State, but higher education more broadly, where is that hope coming from, if there is any?
There's no hope.
It's gone forever?
Well, what we do, we need to build parallel institutions. We have ideologues who are in positions of power for life. Let me just give you one quick example. At Portland State University, 99% of the donations, this is from the National Association of Scholars to Oregon, are from a particular party, to a particular party. You can guess what that party is. It doesn't make any difference ultimately what that party is. But by having that kind of a very tight ecosystem, one of the things that breeds is a kind of intolerance, and they consistently call out alternative voices. I don't see a way back from this at this point other than to build parallel institutions.
This wokeness you describe is starting in younger and younger classrooms. When I was at the Department of Ed, we saw this hitting kids as young as kindergarten. So America's teachers come out of America's colleges. Do you see a link there?
100%. That's the thing. It's an astute question. That's the thing that nobody is talking about. The most important thing, if you really want to get rid of the, as Wilfred Riley calls it, the mind virus of the lower upper class, if you want to extirpate this from all of our systems, the most important thing is to hit colleges of education. And Lyle Asher has done some fantastic job. He's a professor of English at Lewis and Clark University, explaining how colleges of education became woke. Here's the basic problem. If you had a wand and you waved that wand and you got rid of all wokeness from the K-12 system, it would just repopulate. And the reason is, even myself, publications, teaching experience, et cetera, people can't just walk into the classroom and start teaching. They need a teaching certificate. Every program in the country, as far as I know, it's ubiquitous. They're all woke, and they all indoctrinate people into a certain ideology. It's based upon this book. Paulo Freire is a Brazilian educator, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. You teach to liberate people from a kind of oppression, and then that's become applied postmodernism over time. The idea then is that unless you solve the problem in the colleges of education, you will simply never solve the world problem. You can't, because all the people who would then go to teach the class are themselves indoctrinated, and they go on to indoctrinate generations of people.
When we talk about the need for a healthy debate on college campuses, so often the argument stops there, and people aren't really learning what debate does for a student's education. So I figured this is a question for a philosopher. What is it about debate that adds to someone's college experience?
I don't know if it's debate per se, maybe debate as a proxy for open inquiry. The Oregonian just published a lovely letter, an op-ed from a professor who I invited. Phil Smith came into my class. I'm an atheist. I'm an outspoken atheist. I've never tried to hide that. And I've absolutely gone out of my way to invite people who have genuine substantive disagreements with me. And I give them, everybody has the same format. They have an hour to lecture on anything they want. And in the case of my atheism class, I ask them to give the best arguments for the existence of God. And then I give them an hour, or the class is an hour, 50 minutes. So approximately 50 minutes to take student questions. I've also had Corey Miller from Ratio Christi, the largest Christian organization on college campuses, not only come into my classroom in the same format, but we went on a college tour and to talk to people about the importance of intellectual diversity. I believe that students need to be taught the best arguments from people who believe them, and then they should be taught the best arguments on the other side of the issue from people who believe them. That's why you're in college. We need to trust students to make up their own minds, not to deepen the views they already went into college, they came into college with, but to challenge and question those. That's what college should be about. And so unless you have, it's not debate per se, but it's the ability to ask questions and inquire freely and openly about things without fear of repercussions, without fear of that there's a party line that you have to toe. And so in the example of my atheism class, again, I tell people exactly what I think in class, and I have the best representatives of the other side come in, and they should be getting that in all of their classes. But the reason they're not is because professors look at the university system as an indoctrination mill.
That's what a lot of our campus reform students are experiencing. They get to college and they find out they're being presented with only one side of every issue. So what would you say to those students who are paying top dollar, trying to get an education that sets them up for life? What's your advice for them to get an education like that?
Well, the first order of business is that they need to understand that most of their professors, if not all of the professors, it's very discipline dependent. For example, you find less of it in math, for example, and more of it in the humanities. And even within the humanities, it peaks in gender studies, anything ending in the word studies. So the first thing that they have to do is realize that the teachers themselves are looking at this. They participate in the ideology, are in the orbit of the ideology, and they're looking for them to give the right answers to questions, particularly moral questions. If they don't, there's a good chance they'll be graded down or something will happen. I would urge you to watch the reverse Q&A I did a couple of years ago at Portland State University, where I sat in the audience instead of the sage on the stage. And then I just had anybody come up who wanted to speak, students, and then graduate students and then community members, about their experiences with social justice in the classroom. And that conversation, which you can find on YouTube, is utterly horrifying. So the first order of business is to ask what they want to get out of their education. Often, as you'll see from that video, students were in fear and they felt they just had to keep their mouths shut. And there's a very, very good chance that there will be repercussions for asking questions. And so they need to be mindful of that. One thing I would urge students to do is first, they have to show up. Second, if possible, according to laws of their state, never do anything illegal, but record the classroom in which people are telling you that you're bad being white or whatever craziness they're telling you, you're a man and you're whatever insanity they're telling you. Record that. Also, one of the things that's extremely effective in this is what Jody Shaw from Smith College did, is she just looked in the camera and said, "Dear Smith College, I have a few requests." So speaking openly and honestly about your experiences, because many people they realize something's gone awry, but they don't exactly know what it is. And that's why it's so important that they hear from students. But the other thing that I would ask students to do is to be honest with their parents, to be honest with the people who are paying tuition. This is what my education has become. This is what they're teaching me. I'm not comfortable about asking those questions. The problem is you will not find solace in going to the dean or going to the department chair, because they too participate in the ideology. So the whole thing is like a big replication factory. So you need to think long and hard about what you want to do. And I never thought I would say this, whether or not you even want to stay in college. Maybe you'll there's not only is there no shame, it's wonderful to have a vocation. People vocational skills make far more than I do. Be a carpenter, be a plumber. We're in desperate need of that. So maybe we need to rethink the entire educational system, because it's not just broken. It's teaching people things that are false. It's leading them away from a good life. So as long as students are aware that the purpose of their education isn't necessarily to enable them to develop their curiosity, and it's certainly not to find truth because they think they already have their truth. As long as students are aware of that, I think it positions them better as they move forward.
For our viewers who might not know, this is not the first time you've blown the cover off the ivory tower. A few years back, you were part of a group that wrote these fake grievance studies papers, got them published in academic journals. So, Peter, when you were writing about rape culture in dogs or rewriting pieces of Mein Kampf in feminist jargon, did you ever think that these journals would take the bait and you would get published?
I thought that we may get one. I thought we'd probably get one, and we might get three, maybe. My writing partner thought that we'd get zero. Turned out that we got 7. We probably would have gotten, estimates are that we'd have gotten 13. We wrote 20 papers. And so we had no history. We had nothing. The idea is to show that the scholarship was not rigorous and it was ideological, and it's not based in reality. It's not based in evidence. But instead of people saying, wow, maybe there's a problem here, they came after me, they came after my co-authors, they did everything they could to avoid any possibility that the disciplines in which we engaged may be more subject to ideology than they thought.
Peter Boghossian, thank you for answering 5 big questions, and all the best of luck to you going forward.
I appreciate it. Thank you.